I am so excited to dive into this one with you because we're looking at a truly fascinating slice of history. You know, when we think about massive turning points, we usually look at whole decades or years, right? But today, we're zeroing in on just one single month. A month that literally redefined global power dynamics, gave us historic peace treaties, and, at the exact same time, saw some truly shocking regional conflicts erupt. We are talking about December 1996. This wasn't just, wrapping up a calendar year. It was the closing of one era and the absolute explosion of a new one. So let's step right back into a world in rapid transition.
All right, so here's our roadmap for the explainer. First, we'll look at shifting global power dynamics. Then we'll get into resolving decades of conflict, followed by the expansion of new wars. After that, we'll cover the Peru hostage crisis, and we'll wrap it all up with the overall legacy of December 1996. Okay, let's jump right in.
Starting off with Section 1, Shifting Global Power Dynamics.
Okay, so picture this. It's late 96, and the internet is suddenly everywhere. It was becoming one of the fastest growing technologies in human history. Millions of people were literally logging on for the very first time, hearing that classic dial-up tone, right? Businesses were just waking up to the crazy potential of e-commerce, and tech companies, well, they were quietly laying the groundwork for what we all now know as the massive dot-com boom. And why does this matter so much? Because it was building the very foundation of the digital age. Global power was shifting. It was actively decentralizing, moving away from just physical nations and strict military borders, and shifting toward this boundless, interconnected digital frontier, where information was becoming the ultimate currency. A real game changer.
Now, take a look at this number, 120. That is how many countries sent trade ministers to Singapore in mid-December for the very first ministerial conference of the World Trade Organization. I mean, just think about the sheer scale of that. You've got 120 nations sitting down in a single room to hash out trade liberalization, global economic cooperation, and basically the future of international commerce. It was a huge milestone for globalization. It really proved that economic alliances and corporate networks were starting to rewrite the rules of global power side by side with traditional military pacts.
And while those digital and economic borders were shifting, physical borders were going through some massive transitions of their own. December 1996 marked the intense, final stages of preparation for the Hong Kong handover. With just months to go before Hong Kong officially returned to China, global markets and governments were absolutely in overdrive. This impending transfer of sovereignty was, without a doubt, one of the most closely watched political events on the planet. It was this massive geopolitical power shift that would end up having huge economic and political ripple effects well into the 21st century.
Which brings us to Section 2, Resolving Decades of Conflict.
So, what does a shift in global power mean on the ground? Well, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, December 1996 marked exactly 1 year since the signing of the Dayton Peace Agreement. Now, this wasn't some magic overnight fix. For 12 long months, international peacekeepers had to be on the ground just to keep a baseline of stability after years of grueling war. But by late 96, the hard work was actually starting to show. We saw democratic reforms, refugee resettlement, and the slow, painful process of reconstruction. It's just a really powerful reminder of the immense international effort it takes to stabilize these regional conflicts and rebuild shattered community.
Over in Russia, we saw a really similar push for stability unfolding. After the intense fighting of the First Chechen War, President Boris Yeltsin's government was working hard to stabilize a pretty shaky economy, all while trying to implement peace agreements in Chechnya. It was an incredibly complex and volatile environment, to say the least. But despite all those massive ongoing hurdles, there was this lingering, high hope that the country could finally pivot toward a period of lasting stability and recovery.
And then, in Guatemala, we saw an incredible story of profound endurance finally reach a conclusion. Get this. For 36 brutal years, starting way back in 1960, a civil war tore that nation apart. It tragically claimed over 200,000 lives. But finally, on December 29, 1996, the Guatemalan government and rebel forces officially signed a final peace agreement. This wasn't just a regional win. The whole world celebrated this. It was a monumental victory for peace that ended one of Latin America's longest, most devastating civil conflicts, setting the stage for decades of national healing.
Now let's move to Section 3, the expansion of new wars.
So, while Europe and Latin America were rolling up their sleeves for reconstruction and signing historic peace accords, things in Central Africa were taking a very, very different turn. It's almost like a split screen. It perfectly captures this intense duality of December 1996, a world that was simultaneously building peace in some areas while violently expanding war in others.
In eastern Zaire, rebel forces led by Laurent Desire Kabila were continuing their rapid, violent advance across the region, and the human impact? It was immediate and absolutely devastating. It triggered a massive refugee crisis, displacing hundreds of thousands of civilians almost overnight. Plus, neighboring countries were getting sucked right into this vortex of violence. The expansion of the First Congo War during this specific month was not just a localized dispute. It was a massive destabilizing event that would go on to permanently alter the political borders of Central Africa and deeply impact the region's stability for decades to come.
On to Section 4, the Peru hostage crisis.
Let's talk about the singular flashpoint that had the entire world holding its breath. Out of nowhere, on December 17th, members of the Tupac Amaru Revolutionary Movement, often called the MRTA, stormed the Japanese ambassador's residence in Lima, Peru, right in the middle of a massive VIP reception. In one fell swoop, hundreds of diplomats, government officials, and world leaders were taken hostage. It sparked this dramatic, incredibly tense standoff that completely hijacked global media coverage. Literally overnight, it became the single biggest international news story of the entire month.
Now, some captives were actually released fairly early on, but dozens of others remained trapped inside for months. Negotiators were working tirelessly, day and night, while governments all over the world were urgently calling for a peaceful resolution. And you know what makes this event so historically significant? It's the sheer endurance of it. The crisis definitely didn't end in December. It dragged on well into 1997, becoming one of the absolute most tense, closely watched hostage situations of the entire decade. Finally, Section 5, the legacy of December 1996.
Actually, before we completely wrap up, let's take a quick detour off Earth for a second. Because while our planet was shifting politically and borders were being redrawn, humanity was also looking up. Launched back in November, NASA's Mars Global Surveyor spent the entire month of December 1996 traveling steadily through space on a mission to map the red planet in unprecedented detail. It's just this brilliant, kind of beautiful reminder that amidst all those hostage standoffs and regional conflicts, human innovation was actively paving the way for the future of space exploration. So, pulling it all together, in a span of just 31 days, our world witnessed historic peace agreements ending 36-year wars, right alongside the tragic, devastating expansion of regional conflicts in Central Africa. We saw shocking hostage standoffs dominating the 24-hour news cycle, happening at the exact same time as the quiet, explosive growth of the internet and the dawn of a new, globalized digital age. December 1996 perfectly reflected a world caught in a massive, unprecedented transition of rapid political, technological, and social change, a real tectonic shift in global power dynamics. As 1997 approached, the stage was totally set for new challenges and historic moments. But looking back at the sheer density of events packed into that single month, it leaves us with a pretty compelling question. Between the birth of the digital age, the end of a near 4-decade civil war, massive shifts in global trade, or the devastating outbreak of new regional conflicts, which December 1996 story do you think had the greatest lasting impact on world history? It's something truly fascinating to think about. Thank you so much for joining me today.